to kind of get together on different things. And so I thought it would be good. Obviously we're working on this project to work with people with disabilities, but it kind of extends a little more than that, as you can imagine, because we're dealing with people with differences. And I think that was one of the reasons I thought was kind of important with your situation and what you've done in the past, as far as your connections with maybe with John Paul and Harrison. But I think as far as an introduction, we've kind of our paths have crossed many times in a lot of business situations. But I think, as you know, a lot of times things like this kind of develop into other things as you kind of progress. But I thought, I'd comment a little bit about time when you were governor and we were starting up as a service bureau, and there's a lot of issues about technology and companies that were trying to do things. And one of the things that you were willing to do is take another look at some of the things that the state auditors were looking at, what sales tax covered. And at that point, it was, I think, they were kind of viewing us as a service bureau as being a printing company. And, we got a lot of that straightened out, but that was important for technology companies. And I think, I don't know, what you feel is some of your accomplishments as governor, but I know from technology business, it was important that you stepped in at that point and kind of took an interest in it, because that was real important, because there's a lot of competition for technology companies, and things have developed over the years, but that was kind of the early stages. So I just thought you might want to comment on some of your accomplishments as governor. But some of the things I saw was that, and so I was kind of curious what your thinking was along those lines. So.
Well, when in the years before I became governor, while I was practicing law, we became aware of cable television. They asked me to put in a system out at Mall Mill, and someone else had already beaten us to it out there. But in the process, my wife and I went to looking around the area on the outskirts of Little Rock. If you wanted to put a cable TV system in inside Little Rock, you had to have a franchise from the city. And I imagine it's the same up in Harrison. But those are the early days. But we started building in the rural areas, and the people seemed to like it so much, and it was relatively easy to put in because there weren't so many wires, and it was very successful. We built BB and Little Rock and North Little Rock, the areas outside of them. And later, when I got an invitation to help some folks do the same thing in Indonesia, I went over there, and my wife and I built areas outside of Jakarta and outside of Bali, where there was still a rural population. And that was very popular. And then we got into the cities there and did the same thing in some Chinese areas. And so people from all over the world, France, England, shared the same desire to have access to media and eventually to have access to each other through the internet that operates as it does now. That's been many years ago. This is back in 1990 that we were doing this. So it's been important, and I think it's important for the whole world now, particularly.
At one time, you were doing some things with really some advanced things on internet or email, and that was, I think, with a company in Iceland. It was called Smart VR, and I remember some involvement with that project too. So you've been kind of a leader in some things that people may not realize, that it's not been just just the cable, but a lot of other things as far as technology. And I think that's really important to kind of keep in mind as to what's kind of what's been out there and what's happened, because that's kind of a key, I think. And I know that that and other things that other projects that's come along, I know that it seems like a lot of ideas. We've done some, I think, some things in LED, and just something that comes along with as you've been in business for a while, you have a large network, and that's what we have developed. And as far as doing things on the international level, I always kind of refer back to the fact that you know, having to develop relationships with cultures is pretty important. And I think somewhat, the people that have the Arkansas background, I know that we had people come in from all over the world, and they were pretty surprised, as far as how we handle things. Their vision was what people on the East West Coast did. We were equipped to listen, and you have to do listening first, and then understand the culture before you do any of this project. So I think that's one thing I think Arkansas kind of brings to the table is the culture here can match up to a lot of cultures globally, which I think sometimes that's kind of a thing that's been misunderstood, because as we know, the things that's happened to Walmart and other people around this state, they've done a lot of things and developed a lot of things. So it's kind of good to visit with you on those points, because that's something I think you've witnessed and accepted as governor, and also as being involved in some of these projects that you've been involved in.
Walmart's been one of our blessings for the state. They've used their money to do a lot of technical advancement in areas for the state, and I know there's continuing to spread up in North Arkansas.
Yeah, and Harrison was a second store they put in, and the irony of all of that was Sam Walton. I think I did a lot of research on this, and I did actually some things through some of the AI stuff that I have, and he was pretty close to moving things to Harrison at one point. He did a handshake deal with Jonas over here to do the deal, and I don't know that he could have done a deal anywhere else when he started his second store. And the model for Harrison is the one that's probably been used more than any other, because it serves a geographic territory at that time before Branson is about a 70-mile radius, and a lot of stores here at that time. So I think that's one of the things that I picked up on. And I know one of the things I wanted to kind of visit with you today was how strong a relationship, as a representative, as a Democrat maybe, and John Paul Hammerschmidt as a Republican, how close that relationship had developed, and what he did for Harrison, and also, both your attitude toward business and doing best for people in the country versus being, I guess, as we see today, a lot of political alignments that are not very productive. So I thought you might comment a little bit on that, and we'll kind of, we're going to go from there and thinking.
John Paul was an absolute delight. I respected him so much. When I went to Congress and got to see him every day, multiple times on the floor of the House, I just liked him, and I liked to listen to him. And I guess I saw him towards the end of his life when I came up. I think you had invited me up to make some remarks to a civic club there. John Paul was present, and afterwards we walked over to his office. It was part of the joy of a small town, was to be able to walk out of a meeting like that and just stroll across the square and by the trees and sit down and have a nice quiet visit. And we did. He showed me pictures that he had on his wall. We had a good long talk. It was the last time I saw him.
Really? Okay.
And he was a wonderful representative, not only for his district, the 3rd District of Arkansas, including Boone County, but also for our whole state. And if everyone we had in Congress could be as rational and open to hearing what other people have to say, and to weighing what they have to say, and whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, and not just knee-jerk to something being bad. Wonderful. Listen, be pleasant, and use the intelligence God gave us to help out the other fellow, help the world.
Yeah, I know that at that time when I invited you up to, actually it was the Kiwanis Club, and the reason, of course, is our friendship over the years, but the other thing was every time I was at the post office, and ran into John Paul, he had to say, how's our mutual friend Jim Guy doing? And I know you had some common interest because of the military. Of course, he was a veteran of World War II, and obviously you'd been to Vietnam, so there was some commonality there, and it was kind of interesting, and it's a little bit more of the political surroundings that we've had over the last few years. Is as much as John Paul did for the Northwest District and the interstate and all the things he did with the NWA, that the Boone County and Harrison ended up in the Delta region, and not that that's the issues with, I guess, with population and redistribution, but it's kind of odd, and of course, I don't know, it just seemed like it was taken pretty quietly, and I thought that's kind of odd that as much as he did and everything he did for that region over there, that eventually, Harrison and Boone County would be going to a kind of a totally different situation in the Delta. So that's one of the things that's happened over the last few years with the politics. But I know that I don't know that I don't know what you what you observed in the day's climate, but there's a lot of different things that's it makes people want to say, I don't want to vote for none of the above or something, because it's been so big issues. We know your interest because of the military, and one of my first jobs out of college was at the CIA, and so I know all about top secret clearance and code word clearance, and I know all the issues that come about when those things come into play. But I know that was a strong relationship that you had with John Paul as well. So
yeah. Well, gee, we think about the disagreements we can have within one county or one little town, with people developing hatreds for one another, and they don't have to love each other, but open your ears and speak words of comfort and joy to other people. Worship our God. It can be very, very pleasant. But I've watched people all over the world. I've been all over the world, had that opportunity, and to see the hatred that develops country by country for folks, not just because they don't like the way someone else looks or the color of their skin, but they don't agree on something that is important to them apparently, but it's not something that the community needs to agree with them on. But come together and try and figure out how to make things work well for everybody, and it's fun to do it, and it makes life better for somebody else, and that's a wonderful thing to do. You do it for your own family, and do it for others.
I was going to comment on separately, but I know that you're good friends of some of the people I work with, like in South America. I've got some interviews I did with Sid Shreve on our trip out to Phoenix. I know he came back to Little Rock, and we had some meetings on various things that we were doing project-wise. And another friend I have, and I haven't done an interview with him yet, is Paul Case. It's in Denver. And I don't know if you know his total story, but we did a lot of work with the predecessor, I guess, to UIH, and that's Liberty Global. I mean, but we also developed a long-term friendship, and he currently splits time between Denver and also in Maui. He has a rum distillery, believe it or not, but his brother's over there running it because his wife is in hospice. So we've been we've had some concern there with Paul, but I did have a visit with him about Maui. And it's always good to catch up with somebody that's got property over there and doing things. And essentially his house was on the other side of the island, but he had some business, that was affected there in the city. But you have those kind of relationships, and you're always in contact with those people. I know you are too. But it's not just a business thing, but it's one that's it's very personal, and that's the way it always is. And I think the international market kind of proved that too, is that you had those opportunities. And that's why I was, always glad to have you be a friend. And you were helpful recently when we went down. I took my daughter down, and we was going to a Blake Shelton concert, and I wanted to go see the Razorbacks and you went over to the Copper Grill there, and you sat around and welcomed us. It was, I think, Christy was well impressed because she doesn't get to do a lot sometimes because she has orofacial digital syndrome, but we've tried to do a few things lately, and that was one of the highlights, as well as the Phoenix trip turned out a lot better than she thought because of getting to meet Sid and Sharon Shreve, because it was a real pleasant visit that we kind of reported on. But I think those are the kind of things that, they're little things that come about, but they're real important as you go along. Is it's not just you don't just do business and it goes away. You have and a lot of times a lifelong relationship. So I just thought I'd give you a little bit of update on Paul, because I know you've had some contacts that we developed at times and some business there. So, but I wanted to make you aware of that as well.
Make me aware of. I'm sorry, I just missed that last bit.
No, I just said that the some of the common people we kind of you end up making friends with, and sometimes when opportunities come about, you're always involving them, and it's amazing, particularly on the international market, how that come about. Because I know in some of my travels, I was out there. Is like in the 1990s. That was kind of the Gilded Age, they say. Everywhere in the world they were putting in cable. I mean, we went to Ukraine or Russia, just places you wouldn't think of, but obviously South America and over in Asia, and we never had any problem with any people one-on-one. I'm sure if we were wearing a uniform or looked a little bit more like a political person versus a business person, it would have been different. But it's amazing how those kind of relationships happen. And I did spend a little time in Jakarta, and it was very, very nice there. Dwight Harlan was always the one that was the person I always worked through out of your operation there. So
I have to tell you a story about when I was in Asia. Betty and I were having dinner one night, and she said, "Well, where would you like to go for our wedding anniversary?" And I said, "I don't know. Where would you like to go?" And she said, "Hanoi."
Wow.
I said, "Hanoi? I've been to Vietnam twice. I'm not going back to Vietnam for a wedding anniversary." She smiled so nicely, and she said, "Well, that's all right. I'll tell you all about it."
Yeah.
So we went to Hanoi for our wedding anniversary.
Wow, I didn't know that.
We checked in the hotel, and the first two people that came through the door were a couple from Fort Smith that we knew.
That's how it is anymore. I mean, I've had
the next person that came in was someone I had known in Vietnam during the war, and he asked me to join him for dinner. And I won't run through everything, but I waited outside the restaurant with him because he said we'd have to pick this fellow up out of the cab. He'd been wounded during the war.
Wow. So
he came up holding on to the doorknob of the taxi and his wheelchair. And we helped him. We carried the wheelchair into the restaurant, sat down, had a lovely dinner. And I asked him how he'd been wounded and where, and it was on the DMZ, and about 300 or 400 yards down from where I was. I remembered the event. So we had a wonderful talk with each other, and I asked him what he had done when he got back to the United States after he was wounded. And he said, well, when he recovered, he had lobbied the Congress for the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Wow. And
of course, we know that got passed finally, but right. It was real work to do it. But I asked him what in the world he was doing in Hanoi. I get emotional when I think of this. he was there for lobbying for Vietnamese with Disabilities Act.
Wow.
The Vietnamese government had never done anything for their fighting people.
Wow.
Like we had done for ours. And he was there to help the people who had been his enemy in battle. And I hope he's been successful. I haven't talked back with him and I haven't checked. But you talk about a good person.
Yeah.
This portrayed it better than anything I've ever seen.
Oh yeah. Well, that's a great story. There's a lot of those, but I'm glad to hear that you had that one that's very specific to your situation and interest. Talk a little bit about the fact that we're looking at people with disabilities, and of course I've got disabled on my driver's license now because of the Parkinson's and really some other things with eyesight, and just and I know you've kind of been battling some of those, Betty, and it's I know you've done a lot of things to help others, and I know you've been there. You're right there, actually downtown now. But I thought we've been talking to people about their happy place, and it's been one of those things where it's been water, a place, and it could be some place that you enjoyed going to, and I've tried to kind of leave it wide open, but I kind of want to go through particularly people that's in boxing, and we do that as it's a Rocksteady group that I've gotten tied to. It's really close, and I thought, well, we would kind of go out and talk to people, about what their happy place was, and maybe some things that they would like to say about that, and particularly you with all your travel, and maybe even just what you're thinking at this stage. What would you say is your happy place, I guess?
My happy place?
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, watching the sun come up in the morning with my wife and a cup of coffee.
Well, that's a pretty good one. I mean,
and we can do that anywhere we happen to be.
Yeah.
And I'm 81 now, and so I'm feeling my age.
I'm not too far behind that. I know a lot of people, it's friends of yours up here in Harrison are around that age too. So, well, that's kind of an interest, but in just another location, I know I went out and thought, well, there was a place I went to, was Saipan, but is there any international place that you think of that you would think was probably one of the better places, or you've gone to so many different places. Is there any one or two that you think about as where you had some experiences or something that maybe were some of your highlights?
Well, we had the opportunity to when we built the cable television systems in Indonesia. We went into some of the small islands, and the islands and their populace of birds and animals was just spectacular. So that was one. The streets of Italy were one. Betty and I drove all around there.
Oh yeah.
When I was doing some traveling on my own to various places, like I helped knock down the Berlin Wall.
Wow!
When it was going down, I brought back some stones for myself and my kids and gave it to them. And then Prague was interesting, and Czechoslovakia, and I wanted to go skiing in a little place about 50 miles away, 60 miles away from downtown Prague. I got there at midnight. We were slowed because we met the Russian tanks at the border at that time in our history. And they did a pretty thorough search of me before they let me come on in Prague. And I was going to drive out to where I was going. I thought it'd be nice to do that. But I met the Russian tanks at the border of Prague. and they suggested I turn around and go the other way.
Yeah,
And I was very agreeable.
I can imagine.
I got on a train and rode out to where I was going. And midnight in Prague was spectacular with the moon out and the old ancient buildings cast against the sky.
Yeah.
I got on a train and got up into the mountains and went into a bar.
Wow.
And I couldn't speak the language that any of the folks were speaking there. One of the fellows came up to me and spoke to me in various languages, and one was English, and he was asking, where am I from? And I told him American, and he looked at me and drew back and shook his head, and he said, American? I said, yes. He said, passport. I carefully took out my passport and held it with both hands. I never showed my passport without holding it with both hands.
Right.
And I was holding it real tight, and he looked at it and then jerked the thing away from me, looked at it, and in disbelief turned around to this room full of, well, not screaming, but shouting folks who were having a good time, drinking and so forth, and started screaming, American, American. And the room went silent.
Really?
And he pointed at me and said, American. The silence became even deeper, and then they started screaming and cheering, America, America, America. It was a moving experience.
Well,
they loved America, and these were the youth of Czechoslovakia.
Great. That's a great story. That's probably the best place we can be to end this discussion. I really appreciate your time. We've been, I guess, around with a lot of things over the years, and it's just good to get back with you, and we'll stay in touch. We're in and out of Little Rock, so we'll definitely, always touch base when we're there.
Look forward to seeing you over a good cheeseburger again soon.
Okay, thanks. And I think we've discussed a little about what happens when you get that age, but I'll be 80 in February. So I'm 79. I think you say I'm in my 80th year or something.
Yes, if you're going to be 80, that means you'll be in your 81st year.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to push it too much.
Yeah. It's fun.
Yeah. Well,
I've enjoyed visiting with you, and I look forward to seeing you down here. I hope soon.
Yeah, we'll be there.
I cannot get over 140 pounds. This read my eye, by the way. I don't know if it was visible on what you were doing or not.
No, I don't
but
think so.
I had a bunch of skin cancers taken off. One was here in my forehead, and of course, when they do surgery there, the blood from it runs down. So that's the remnants of that surgery a month ago. It'll be gone in another few weeks. Well, listen, I got to get in here with my wife.
All right. Same here. Okay, thanks for your time. Hey, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.